Hi, this is that second video that I promised you with regard to massage regulation that actually works to curb human trafficking and prostitution under the guise of massage. And as in the last video, I hinted that massage establishment licensing is not part of that. And that's because it doesn't work. And in fact, our two largest national professional associations have basically said the same thing. It doesn't work. And in fact, part of that, I think, has to do with the fact that they're criminals. Human traffickers, prostitutes, they're criminals, and that requires a criminal law enforcement response. And the reason why massage establishment licensing doesn't work is because criminals lie, they cheat, they game the system. You find one loophole, they'll find another, and you close that loophole, they'll find another. And if you try to close too many loopholes, you end up harming legally practicing massage therapists. But we know this because, for example, in Texas, they simply cheated the system by not getting the licenses whatsoever. And they did their thing until they got caught. In Utah and in Boston, we know that they gamed the system because they simply changed the name on their businesses to Reiki, another kind of bodywork, that a practice that tends not to be regulated in many states, and so they're exempt from massage therapy laws, including establishment licensing. And so human trafficking has not been abated in those areas. And also we know that establishment licensing doesn't keep businesses from getting their license, their establishment license. We know that from the Florida raids that occurred in the end of 2018, because those businesses, all of them actually held a massage establishment license, and some of the practitioners in those businesses actually held massage licenses. So, and they were doing criminal activity. And so it just simply doesn't work. And so with a law enforcement response, there needs to be some things in place for it to be a good response. One is that you actually have to have the laws in place. Complete and comprehensive human trafficking, prostitution, aggravated prostitution, solicitation laws, all those laws need to be in place. In fact, they do need to be complete, because, for example, in Montana, it wasn't until 2019 that the legislature actually made it a crime to provide hand jobs or do assisted masturbation. So the laws have to be complete. The second piece of that is you have to have appropriate law enforcement to enforce those laws. And it needs to be an interagency or multi-jurisdictional response, because these are criminal syndicates. They cross state lines. So you need to have agencies that can do that too. So the FBI, Homeland Security on the federal side, they need to be involved. Sheriff's Department, police departments need to be involved on the local side. And in between them sits the state agencies, like the Highway Patrol, as well as your state's version of the Department of Justice. And in fact, that department typically will help coordinate these interdictions as well. And in fact, on the statewide level, it's best to have a task force available that will bring all these disparate agencies together. And then part of that is that it's going to cost a lot of money to do that. And that's the third piece that needs to be in place, which is that the legislatures in all the states have to appropriate enough money to be able to make a difference, because local agencies don't have the money, and that's part of the reason why these local cities are setting up these establishment licensing things, to try to make us responsible for something that their law enforcement can't do. And here's the news. A profession is not responsible for regulating the criminal element in its profession. It's law enforcement, and that's the only response that's really appropriate with regards to that. So anyway, back to my parts on what works. So there has to be money in place, and part of that, they not only have to pay for the interdictions, which there are two kinds. One is that there's the raids that shut down the establishments where prostitution and human trafficking are taking place, but they also need to do what are called demand stings as well, which targets the sex buyers, because if you diminish the demand, you're going to diminish the supply, and you need to target those buyers in order to diminish the demand. And then there has to be public education, there has to be training, there has to be coordination, and so so that's a lot to pay for. So that's why there needs to be money to be able to do this. The other response that needs to happen with regards to this is on the civil code side. And I'm not talking about, again, I'm not talking about establishment licensing, I'm talking about public nuisance laws. A lot of states have them, and a lot of local jurisdictions have them as well that can be enforced. And if they're not broad enough, then you need to add provisions to them to be able to go after the premises where human trafficking and prostitution occurs. Because these public nuisance laws basically are like if a landlord has a vacant lot with a junked vehicle and it's overgrown, the city can force them to clean up their act, basically. And these laws have been used to affect human trafficking and prostitution. In fact, in San Francisco, they used it to shut down some brothels under the guise of massage and fine the owners and for renting to these properties to those folks. So it makes the landlords accountable to know who they're renting to. The other place where it occurred was a city used it to go after the seedy hotels where prostitution was happening on the premises. They threatened them and made them pay attention to and clean up their act to stop prostitution from occurring on their premises. Now, everything that I've been talking about is generalized. It has nothing to do with massage therapy, and that's the point, is that massage therapists shouldn't be singled out in with these issues. And in fact, human trafficking happens in a lot of different venues and in a lot of different ways. For example, sex trafficking is happening under the guise of massage, yes, but it also happens at hotels. And it also happens through labor trafficking as well, in restaurants, in nail salons, and also in hotels. They're prime locations for human trafficking to occur. So massage should not be singled out. However, our profession, there are some things that our profession can do. So for example, in our neighborhoods, when we see these places under the guise of massage pop up, we know it, we can tell. I think that it's important for us to report that to law enforcement, not your board. Well, you can report to the board, but report it to law enforcement because they're the ones who will look at a criminal investigation with regards to these issues. And you're not required to do this, it's just a suggestion. But I think it can be helpful. The second thing that we can assent to that's not really a big burden to our profession but also takes care of another issue is what I call post and look. And what that means is that massage therapists could be required to post their licenses in a conspicuous place in the business and then allow law enforcement and or department personnel that regulates massage therapy to come in and take a look to see if you're in compliance with that law of posting the license. And what this does is two things. One is it gives law enforcement an opportunity to look in the business to see if there are any other telltale signs of human trafficking where they could actually take that away and then do some further criminal investigation because it gives them some probable cause. But it also takes care of another issue in our profession, which has to do with practitioners who would otherwise be legally practicing except for the fact that they don't have a license. And it's not fair to those who are licensed to have unlicensed practitioners as well. Everyone should comply with licensing. So that's my take on what needs to happen with regards to our profession and a law enforcement response to this, and it has nothing to do with us being burdened because we are a healthcare profession, and no other healthcare profession has burdens like establishment licensing placed upon them in order to do their business, and neither should we because we are healthcare. We're not adult entertainment. And so thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful, and take care.